welcome to the hard sell, where a stick in the swill-bucket rattles back. Today we're flipping through the pages of the past once again with another Happiness in Magazines. Our magazine for this episode is another American one, People, the weekly showbiz, puff and human interest bollocks bulletin of choice. Superficially like Heat, but far classier, which isn't a high bar. Established in 1974, 51 years ago, I'm afraid so, by 2009 it was America's biggest and most highly read magazine, although it dropped to second place in 2018. That is mostly due to the death of print, though. First place is the AARP magazine. The issue we're looking at is dated September 16th, 1985, when it was still People Weekly, and its cover story is all about the moral scandal of rock and roll music that was going on in America at the time. Call this a tribute to Ozzy Osbourne, if you like, although the actual representatives of the devil's music chosen for the cover are Prince, a pre-True Blue Madonna, and David Lee Roth. Obviously this is part of the same mess that led to the rise of the PMRC and Frank Zappa appearing before the Supreme Court to defend the First Amendment. And all the mothers of prevention ultimately got out of it was those parental advisory stickers. Along the way, the more deranged and swivel-eyed representatives of this moral crusade accused the likes of Ozzy and Judas Priest of causing massacres and suicides based on what their records sounded like backwards, and sometimes even forwards, given how incomprehensible Ozzy was. This very issue includes an article implicating AC/DC in the crimes of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Anyway, all that's the actual content of the magazine. We're not interested in that around here. We're all about the stuff in between all the material of actual worth. The advertising. And there's a whole lot of it in here. At least half the pages, if not slightly more. It's a weekly magazine, it's even in its name, or it was then, so it takes a lot of selling to break even. So I'm not going to go through all the adverts in this issue, we'll be here all day. Just the ones I can say something interesting about. So we should be in and out in about 5 minutes. Cool. Inevitably, the first advert is for cigarettes. Camels, specifically, and Camel Lights, even more specifically, because this is the mid-80s, when it had become unavoidable that the damn things will kill you. So the tobacco companies created low tar for those people who were actually concerned about that sort of thing, but still chemically addicted to the nicotine. The advertising here positions low tar as a whole new world, shining, shimmering, splendid, with what appears to be Charles Bronson lighting up in a cabin by a glistening lake of fresh water in the fresh air. Well, at least it was. You see what they're trying to imply about low tar. It's clean, it's healthy, it's crispy, even. Oh, bollocks, of course. Low tar is no healthier whatsoever, it just tastes different. 1985 is before colour printing on this kind of scale became largely affordable. Radio Times, for instance, didn't go full colour until 1990, and that obviously has a much smaller print run than People. So half of this magazine is in black and white, including the adverts. Most of them are able to make the most of that fact, but this first one seems to me like it really wanted to be in colour. In black and white it's a little flat and uncentered. In colour this probably would have been quite a cool and striking image. Oh well. This is the Panasonic triple take, flying about in the early 80s Top of the Pops title sequence, demonstrating its cleverness. It's a bit like the Pi Tube Cube, except instead of having a tape deck, radio and television, it's got a hidden turntable for playing vinyl. Shame it's 1985, and the CD is about to explode. Also, presumably you can't put the turntable back in while it's playing because the needle will get in the way, which makes it not very much use for vinyl beatboxing. Apparently it was really heavy anyway. And now, some baby talk. Apart from the daft headline, this next one uses the limitations of grayscale much better. Lots of white space surrounding the product, and the header in fat, bold type. It's just a shame about the words in it. Like the last one, this one's come out just at the point that its product's obsolescence has become inevitable. The IBM PC and the Apple Macintosh have both arrived with their own word processing capabilities, and the typewriter's days are numbered, except for esoterics like Cormac McCarthy, or collectors like Tom Hanks. Even electronic ones like this, which correct your spelling before hammering it onto the page, are effectively doomed. Next, alcohol. Johnny Walker Red Scotch, apparently, which has been described as powerful, intense and unique, thin mouthfeel and weak flavours, and if you ever had a slot car racetrack as a kid and licked the magnetic underbody of one of those cars, you'll know what it tastes like. Still a bestseller though, so... This advert seems to take inspiration from the little top-hatted douchebag on the bottle, who, with his riding crop and boots, and especially in his red label configuration, does resemble a man setting out to tear some small animals into bloody, screaming chunks of viscera for laughs. Talking of Cormac McCarthy. That's smoking and drinking covered, and a couple of gadgets for good measure. The only thing missing so far is a car, and by so far I mean page 8, because that's where we see our first one. It's the Ford Escort, one of the most generic of cars, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's the most solid car there is, almost a platonic standard of the family saloon, except for the estate model. And that's why it was one of the best-selling cars worldwide. Over 4.1 million of the things were sold in Britain alone over its 33-year lifespan. And that's what this advert is about. It basically hopes the reader will conflate sales with quality, because it doesn't say anything about the car except that it's sold better than yours, assuming yours is on the list, which it probably is because the list seems to consist of pretty much every other car in America at the time. The Escort remained pretty much top of the charts until they abruptly killed it off in 2004 in favour of the Focus, which in its turn died this year. Another point of interest is this tiny bit of print here. Buckle up, together we can save lives. Happy now, Ralph Nader? A couple of these are multi-page advertising supplement extravaganza, like this one for high-class cat food Fancy Feast. You can tell it's high class because its mascot cat, Mascat, is one of those fluffy white jobs with a Wilford Brimley moustache. The premise is clearly delineated at the start there, the richest cats in the world and how they live. Basically a parody of the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Lifestyles of the rich and flufferters, if you like. There are 6 pages of this, and I'm not going to show all of them, but the thing is, these are all real cats, and their real cat lives. Hamlet III here really was a fixture at the Hotel Algonquin, and Agatha and Scott really were among the vast army of cats living at the Hemingway estate. Ernest Hemingway was a crazy cat lady, who knew? There's also cats belonging to the Vanderbilts and Wallace Annenberg. These profiles occupy the left pages, while on the right are more straightforward adverts for Fancy Feast, underlying its fanciness by placing it alongside other opulent items. Chippendale furniture, Dutch masters, Persian rugs, none of which make the slightest difference to the cat, except as much as the chair is good to sit on. And the rug will probably be fun to destroy. Or here, make your cat think you're rich by serving this high-class mashed salmon on fine silverware. Again, your cat will not care. All this opulence is blatantly not for it, it's for you. An obvious, unspoken truth that the advert itself can't really say aloud. All culminating in a prize draw, a sweepstakes, in which you could win a Mercedes-Benz in a shade of brown that I suspect was meant to be gold, a silver tea service, sterling silver anyway, a cruise on the QE2 via Concorde, or just a massive box of cat food. Alright, enough cat. Danger of getting toxoplasmosis here. Let's switch it up with some manly, rugged, hard-scrabble individualism, as only Americans can do, to the extent of it becoming a pathology. Here's a worried-looking man. Maybe his kid is taking to this whole semi-feral Western pioneer masculinity a little too much. At least that's what I hope these marks on his knees mean. Moving swiftly along, this is actually for a smell, from Ralph Lauren, with the unfortunate name of Chaps Musk. To me, the musk of someone's chaps is something to be avoided, especially at the end of the day. I'm certainly not going to splash it all over my own face. This is a very suspect advert in many ways. Staying on that note, whether you like it or not, this range of feminine hygiene products has invented a disposable bag to keep them in until they're needed, so you can carry them with you. Then toss. Seems like that's the last thing you'd want to do in the circumstances, but you do you. Just don't forget to wash your hands. Okay, this episode is getting downright filthy. Let's clean it up with a detergent ad. In 2 parts. Well, no, not really. More a sort of off-white. With red bits, obviously. Turning the page. Okay, yes, that is pretty white. I don't see what it's got to do with that sock, though. Apart from also going on the legs. Or the eggs, as it were. What a stupid name for a product that is. But it works. Oh, hang on, this isn't over the page, this is the opposite page. Silly me. The PDF format confused me for a moment there. Okay, so yes, that is whiter than before, well done. Oxydol, originally a soap. In fact, the original soap that led to the term soap opera by sponsoring the radio show Ma Perkins. Then its sales dropped and Procter & Gamble transferred the name to a detergent instead. Since then, they've sold it off to a new company made up of their old employees. So you can actually still get it if you look hard enough. I wouldn't have thought it would be the highlight of your day, though. Here's a follow-up to an earlier one. We had a black and white one-pager trying to get us to buy an electronic typewriter at the start of the magazine. Here, along about the middle, is the thing that's killing it. One of them, anyway. With a 2-page spread in glorious colour. The Apple IIc. Offspring, it says, of the Apple IIe. So they're not very good at the alphabet, but they're brilliant at computers, honest. Yes, I know, the E stood for enhanced and the C for compact. It's a joke, don't at me. Look at that chunky boy, with the keyboard built right into the edifice. Almost as much a sign of the times as the fact that they're still making fruit-based puns in the copy. That's long since ceased to be an interesting thing to do. In fact, I think by now they're making tech-based puns in adverts for apples. If that's not 1985 enough for you, here's Victoria Principal, apparently about to be devoured by her own hair. Colossal Moor-like hairdos sculpted via hairsprays and mousses were, of course, considered extremely correct at the time. So here's Germac, who have apparently trademarked the slogan, the trade secret for beautiful hair, just in case anyone else wanted it. Victorian Principals here was, of course, one of the biggest stars in American television at the time, and her reign coincided with both her time as Germac's official spokesmodel and the rise of increasingly surrealist hairstyles. And while Germac never quite put Victoria in one of those feathered things that look like a cross between a close-up of a duck and a diagram, there were 1 or 2 times in the decade when they probably counted themselves bloody lucky that she was one of the most beautiful women in the world and could pull off this sort of thing on her head. Doesn't know if it's coming or going, that one. Moving toward the back of the magazine, more cats. This time concerned with the other end, and being rather disrespectful to boot. I wonder how they got it to hold still enough to paint those stripes on it. Sedation, possibly. Anyway, the point is, of course, that cat shit smells bad, which is a pretty obvious point to make. So get this multicoloured litter with deodorants and things. I didn't know kitty litter was an actual trademark brand name. That might be the ultimate genericized trademark. Another advertising supplement shows up a few pages later for MetLife Insurance, which means it stars the cast of Peanuts. 1985 was the year they signed the seminal deal with Charles Schulz to adopt Snoopy and Friends as mascots, which they kept out until 2016, when they decided they didn't have the energy to pretend to care about regular people anymore. The inevitable accusations of selling out flew, but Sparky just shrugged and went on making millions of dollars a year. Here they're promoting a competition where you can fly out anywhere in the USA, provided it's on this gaudy but cute double-page spread. Or in other words, is a state capital. You can also get it as a poster just for entering. Second prize is a bath towel. Good grief. More cigarettes, anyone? Benson and Hedges here with an advert that suggests that whoever advertises them in America is tripping over themselves chasing the mid-80s zeitgeist. Remember, in Britain at this time we were advertising the brand with this sort of thing. By necessity, of course, because of increasingly harsh restrictions on tobacco advertising. Restrictions that, of course, they don't have in America in 1985. Merely a polite little warning from the Surgeon General in the corner where it won't hurt anyone. Anything else would be totalitarianism, and possibly communism. Certainly advertising is free to be much more straightforward, even generic. And usually that works fine, but here, like I said, they don't seem to be understanding 1985 very well. The guy's dressed for the 50s, despite his IBM PC running Lotus 123 or whatever that is. The woman does at least have the requisite big hair, as well as a fur coat that she appears to have shoplifted. This is the decade which saw kleptomania finally included in the DSM-3, so it's up to date in a sense. Also, I'm surprised at how much uglier B&H packs were in America. I know these are technically lights and menthols again, but still, it's almost as off-putting as the gruesome medical images they come adorned with these days. Almost. The back page has a more successful example for Lucky Strikes. This one's full of ladies, presumably. I'm not sure they'd given enough of a shit about the male homosexual cigarette market in 1985. It's the advertiser's idea of the female gaze, whatever the intention, with its hirsute feathered blonde displaying his fluffy chest and expansive area, cigarette hanging from his lips like a new wave James Dean. And that's it, basically. You barely even need the slogan there, just the image of handsome McSexy man on its own sums up what Lucky Strike are doing. You either want to be him or ravish him. Please associate that feeling with our product. And yet again, lights. The whole concept of lights was such bollocks that the manufacturers have actively been banned from using words like that. Which is why you have things like Marlboro Silver now instead. Didn't make a difference, of course. People still think those are healthier, even though they have the exact same amount of addictive and or carcinogenic chemicals in them. And that's the end of the magazine. Nowhere near all the adverts, of course, but enough to get the general idea. This is a populist magazine. Among the ones I didn't cover in detail, because I couldn't think of anything funny or insightful to say, no change there then, says the chorus, were ads for more booze, always classy booze though, or at least that's what they want you to think, no 6-packs of Coors here. More tech, both for the home in the form of sound systems and VCRs, and for the office via Apple and AT&T. More lady-targeted ads, both cosmetic and menstrual. And, of course, more cigarettes. Lights and menthols, naturally. With the odd outbreak of Ford cars and Goodyear tyres. The assumption seems to be that People was mostly, but not exclusively, read by the ladies, with approximately a third of it sufficiently interesting to masculine eyes to justify slipping in a truck or a musky scent. Or that new and exclusively mid-80s symbol of masculinity, a computer with stock prices running up the screen. I don't suppose it's all that different now, apart from the yuppie element. I'd have to buy it to find out. And who buys print magazines anymore? Except old people. This has been a Bob the Fish production, one of dozens you can watch right now for free on bobthefish.org.uk. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell, and join us on patreon.com/applemask to support further productions and gain fabulous exclusive content, like my ongoing history of the BBC, your day's viewing on a random day in history, even a few exclusive mini video essays. Plus the satisfaction of knowing that thanks to you, I get to eat regular meals. bobthefish.org.uk. We care because you do.